listening to the Ocean Rowing Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Painter, physical therapist and owner of Strong and Empowered Rowing. I help people continue their love of rowing without aches and pains. Along the way, I decided I wanted to row across the Atlantic Ocean. I'm finding it super hard to get in touch with previous ocean rowers and find the answers on how to make this possible. So this podcast is to share my story and what I learn as I get ready for and ultimately cross the Atlantic Ocean. Hear from experts in different areas and from others who have completed ocean rows. So anyone who wants to do this has easy access and we can share our stories with the world.
By fluke, we were watching Netflix. We watched Four Girls in a Boat, the Pacific one, and I just said to Kate, I reckon I could do that. And she said, well, I think you should. And that was that.
Welcome to episode 7 of the Ocean Rowing Podcast. My name's Amanda Painter, I'm your host, and you just heard from Pete Rhodes and how he found ocean rowing and decided to cross an ocean. So in this episode, I interview Pete Rhodes and we talk about a lot of things. One, we hear about how he's going to cross the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, in May of 2020, solo, all by himself, not in a race. He's also building his own boat, which is awesome because if you remember, or if you've heard my other podcast episodes, I want to build my own boat. He's building the boat that I want to build, which is pretty cool. So he talks a lot about that. He shares some info on that since I don't really know much and I have no idea what I'm doing. So he shares lots of knowledge in regards to his boat. Not only that, but he explains why he's rowing, what charity he's rowing for, which is Aberdeen Hospital, and why it's so close to his heart. Not only that, but I'm going to get him on here again. So we're going to do 3 episodes with Pete Rhodes, and this is episode 1 of that. So let's go. But yeah, so how's your boat coming?
Good, I think, yeah. Like, I've had a bit of a slow couple of weeks just with everything seems to be like interrelated. Like everything I'm doing seems to need 5 other answers to get like before you make one cut. Because it's, I don't know, like the whole thing is right at my limit. Like I'm right, I have to learn right up to when I make the decision. So I'm like right on the cusp of my capability. So everything's like full thinking to get it done. And so I like, there's just a lot of processing. I can't
As
quite.
in you need to research things because you don't know what that next step is?
Yeah, some of that, and then some of just not really knowing what it's supposed to look like at the end or anything like that. Like there's the whole thing going on. And people keep asking like, how are you getting on, or when do you think it'll be finished? And I've just no clue because I've never done any of the steps. I don't know what's left to do. But so
are you the first one building this boat?
Yeah, I think there's a father and son team, as I understand it, somewhere in Eastern Europe that are also building the same design, because Phil's come back to me with a couple of refinements that they've asked for. Mm-hmm. So they must be at a similar stage because they're planning things like the rowing deck height and the seat rails and stuff like that, which is sort of at the point that I'm at in terms of planning, because you need to know that now before you can build all the stuff that fits underneath it. So
that's nice to kind of have somebody doing it with you, even though like you're not next to each other. You can be like, oh, okay, I'm on the right track. This person's kind of close to me. And
I think like I've specifically tried to not go back to Phil with every question under the sun, because I think that was always the implication originally, was that he was doing a design, but he's basically retired anyway, so he doesn't want to be hand holding. So I'm trying to retain that air that I actually understand what he's sent. Which is, we're working off a line drawing of the outline of a hull, and that's it. There's no fittings and there's no systems and there's nothing interacted with each other. So stuff like drainage and plumbing and wiring you've got to come up with it all. So you've got to know everything before you can put it all in, sort of thing. So that's been. But I think like you've seen that spreadsheet that I did. You've seen like the spec, and I think that I've not done much, like I chip away at that sheet, but I've not done much on that in the last few weeks, which kind of makes me feel like I've got to a point that I'm happy with the spec that I'm putting in and the
Nice.
sort of the choices that we've made with that. So that's been, as the changes come down on that, I'm feeling more confident in my choices that I've made.
So why did you decide to build a boat?
Well,
so you're building your own boat. You're going to do your own crossing. Why'd you decide to do it?
I guess there's there's quite a story in that. So a few reasons. Like one, I wanted the project. Like I like building stuff. I like being out in the garage, and I felt like that was something I could do. But also there's justification behind it. Like well, this will be rambling. So the first reason was like I'd like the value of my time to go to the charity. So if you go and buy one of these slick looking white boats that are out there, you can drop 80k without really sort of batting an eyelid, and that's a lot of capital. So the biggest skill that I'm lacking is fundraising. Like that's something I've never done before, so I figured I'd try and keep that requirement as low as possible. So that's one reason for the self-build. Two is if I'm asking for money, then I want as much of that to go to the charity as I can. So rather than drop capital into someone else's time to build it and then not reclaim that in the resale, I figure that stuff I'm spending on the goods that go into this boat should be mostly reclaimable. So I'm asking for a lot less commercially and then hoping that in the resale, because I've put my 1,000 hours of time into the construction, that's sort of the loss, if you like, financially. And then if I can resell this boat for market value, and they do seem to hold through the first couple of sailings, then that cash should go directly to the hospital. So if I'm asking for money from sponsors, I'm not saying, chip in and let me enjoy this, and then I might give 30% of it away. I'm saying, look, because I'm working hard in the background and we're building this thing, I'm hoping that 90% of it goes to the charity. And I feel like that's an easier thing to sell to companies, because they're not just paying for the experience, they're paying, it's eventually the whole lot's going to charity.
Yeah.
So that seemed, so apart from it's not selfish, but I really want to build one. Like, I just like a big project, and like I've not had one on for the last couple of years that's been of this stature, so it's really nice to get going on it. Plus it's a project where I'm at home all the time, which isn't always regular. So like if I'm doing longer distance projects or I'm training 10 hours, 12 hours a weekend, then that's that takes you out of the house a lot. Whereas this one, I'm chipping away at it in the evening, so I'm at home with everyone. So so it's like a year at home, but I'm fully involved in the project I want to be doing.
Yeah.
So there's a whole list of stuff, but it just the whole project came at the right time and sort of ticked all the boxes, and that's why we've gone for it. So we finally had a charity because of what the hospital did for Cedar. And then once we'd recovered from that, we were all looking for something to do, and I needed the next project. And then it just, by fluke, we were watching Netflix. We watched Four Girls in a Boat, the Pacific one. And I just said to Kate, I reckon I could do that. And she said, well, I think you should. And that was that. Like, it was just, just seemed to fit. Yeah, because I've been doling about the last few years, not really finding something to do. So that's, it's just serendipity that it lined up and fitted in at the same time.
That's awesome. So I know a little bit about your charity, but people listening don't. Would you mind telling us a little bit about why you're doing this, what you're raising for?
So a year ago, or just over 14 months now, our fourth child was born. And
congrats.
Thank you. Yeah. And so he was perfectly fine when he was born. And then a week later, he just wasn't really feeling very well. He was really grizzly and breathing quite quickly. So the midwife booked us in to go for a checkup in the hospital. And by the time we got there, he was really struggling, like in the car. We're about 45 minutes away from the hospital. And then when we got him into the assessment unit, and by the time the doctors got him on the table, he was 32 degrees. And like when they took his baby girl off, he was grey, from his armpits down. And what had happened was, well, we know now what had happened was his aorta had a kink in it, which happens to about 1 in 100,000 babies. And it kinks to greater or lesser degree, but in his, it basically shut. And so he wasn't getting any blood below his heart. So within 20 minutes, he was fully in an incubator, and they paralyzed them and put them on life support and intubate them. And they've got drugs that reopen this valve that cause a problem. So he was stabilized in Aberdeen and then flown down to Glasgow, which is a couple of hours away. And then, so within 24 hours, he's had the surgery to cut out a section in his aorta, and they sewed it back together, and he's spotless.
Wow.
So if you want to get congenital heart defects, this is the one to get, because it's like it's a one-stop shop. But what they did in Aberdeen to stabilize it was incredible. And so we want to make sure that department, they're rebuilding all the entranceway and the system to process the high priority cases that come in there, which is what we were. We just want to make sure they've got the capacity for someone else to have the experience that we had when they go there.
That's great. Sorry you went through that.
Well, yeah, it was pretty intense at the time, but then, it took us a long time to process it, and maybe we're not quite through it yet, but it's also given us a reason. We've never really had a huge charitable cause, like we've done charity work and stuff before, but never had a cause that's close to us. So that helped line up, and we've survived it and we're better for it, but it's also allowed me the ability to fundraise for this trip. So, we're spinning it up to be the best for us that it can be.
So what is the charity?
It's the Royal Aberdeen Children's Hospital.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I was reading through your story and looking at your webpage for just get to know you a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I remember reading that story, and it made me thinking, like, I don't feel like I have that charity cause. Like, I don't have something really close, and I'm like, okay, people, like, let me know what charities exist. So if anyone listening has a charity idea, I'm kind of in that spot where I'm like, I want something I believe in, and that's great that kind of felt like you have that thing that you believe in and you're supporting it. So I'm very happy for you.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Like I say, if you really think about it, you've got causes that affect you throughout your life. Like, we've done stuff for, my dad was a fireman, so we've got a good fireman's charity here, and both of our grandparents were involved in medical stuff, so they've got a lot of stuff that affected them. But it's interesting when you've got one that's a bit more relevant. Certainly makes it easier to, or at least to convey the story and to convey the justification behind your efforts. It's easier to verbalize it if nothing else.
I liked how you also mentioned at the beginning how you're part of your building your boat is for you to you're putting in the hours, and that's kind of your gift to it, and hoping to be able to have people help you and help the charity at the same time. But like, your gift is time, because I don't have the money to build a boat.
Yeah, so nor do we.
And the fundraising is by far, so you mentioned the fundraising was hard for you. Like, I have no idea where to start with fundraising, and that's kind of the thing that I'm talking the most about with people. Is the fundraising it's intimidating, like, to ask people for money for a cause, but also to do a trip, and it's nerve-wracking. It's a lot of money. So I like how you interpreted it as time, and I'm like, oh, like, yeah, I can give time. I have a lot of time.
Yeah.
So I like that.
It is a lot of money, and to try and take, like, if I had the money, I would do it tomorrow, and I wouldn't tell anyone, and I'd be home, and then I'd be getting on with something else. You know what I mean? Like, it's the trip, like, the actual experience of it is entirely selfish.
Yeah.
Like, there's no benefit to anyone of me being out there apart from, So to spin that into something that's justifiably worth someone's time and effort to assist with is quite an interesting, but it would appear, if you look at everyone else that's doing it, there are hundreds, if not more, of people that are willing to pay to be part of these experiences. So it can't be that hard, because 35 teams a year plus all the independents are funding their trips. So to see that, you know, it is doable, and they are people, so there must be a way. So you just have to solve it. That's maybe my broken logic, but you know, if someone else can do it, then you can do it. That's you just got to spin it up. And I've been really fortunate here because I started the project off my own back, and you know, all we started with was the website, and then just by fortune and chatting to people, I got the first £1,000 sponsor without really asking. Just one of the companies that I work with, one of the suppliers, I was just chatting incidentally, sort of in a social setting, and he's like, oh, we'll get into that. And that paid for the initial round of fiberglass and foam. So basically the point I'm up to now with the hull is only sort of, I'm only into using up the first couple of £1,000 worth of materials. So you can get yourself to a bare hull with very little funding. And then I think once you've got something tangible that you can almost wheel about, it's not a finished boat, but it's a, you know, it's a voluminous thing, and it's big and it's physical. You can show it to people and you can say your name here rather than just like, hey, it's me and I'm going rowing, show me the money. You're
and
saying,
it shows some dedication too. Like you've put in that time, you've already created it, like I'm going to do this. Here it is.
Yeah. So if you take my timeline, there's like 4 months hard construction work that you can do off, and I'm talking in pounds, obviously, like a couple of £1,000 worth of input. So that's a massive chunk of project. And like, again, the social media is not my skill, but it's bought up 100 Instagram posts just by being out there every night. So it's a tiny swell, but it's a groundswell. And that's, so I've been really fortunate in that and talking to people here at work, the company that I work for has gone ahead and become the main sponsor for the project.
Oh, that's great.
Is probably like, it's a massive fortune, but it makes it so much easier for me. So Sparrows are a reasonably sized global company, and they've got operations all over. But when the directors saw it without my pressing, and then they sort of called me up and said, we'd like to be a part of this. So that part is fortune, but it's also just the effort that's gone in behind it paying off. So I think if you can get out there and start making the process. So we did invest some money in the start, and my parents chipped in to help buy that initial section of materials. And then, like I say, this other company, ISC, came in with £1,000, and that's like, if you were going the same route that I've gone, that's 6 months of media feed, of construction work, of proof of concept. And once you've shown that you've got to that point, that's a huge investment. And then you're just stuffing systems in, which is where the real, that's where the real cost is the electronics and the fittings. And that adds up really quickly. But if you've got somewhere to put it, people can see that, you know, they're paying for a hatch or they're buying your electrics or whatever. So I think that's the route to go. And you can get there for not much.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. That's what I would tell myself, I think, 6 months ago.
Perfect. That's all I need. So you started building 6 months ago?
I started building at the end of February. So like 3 months ago.
3 months. Wow, you're doing awesome.
Well, yeah, some days it feels like I am, and some days it feels like I'm going around in circles. So the whole concept came up at the end of last September. Like, that's when we watched the Netflix movie. So we're only 8 months in, so it's pretty good. But then we'll see what the next 8 months brings, because that'll put us pretty close to kick on. Yes, I gave myself like an 18-month timeline to try and leave Canada May 2020. Okay. Because I felt like that seemed reasonable to you, like 8 months ago. I was like, oh yeah. I still say it's 18 months and it's like 16, 14.
That's okay.
It's all coming, but...
Now you're at like 12.
Yeah, thanks.
Nope.
13, yeah. Late May. So
I've been talking to a bunch of people, and they tend to do about 18 months. So you're like right on the money for it, but they're also not building their boat.
Yeah. So, which, I don't know, must have been like, Yeah, but they're probably doing a lot more training than I am. So, but at the same time, like I've never trained for more than 3 months for a big project. I just get I iterant millennial mindset. I suppose I can't stay entertained by things for that long. So, like I'm not unfit at the moment, but I'm not specifically fit. Yep. And like if I'm running or something and I'm running for more than 3 months, I get so bored of it. So I figure I've got to be careful with applying the build at the right time. Otherwise, I'll screw the volume right over and I'll just end up sick of it, basically.
Yeah.
So that's all.
I don't think the rowing specific training, you don't even need to start now. Like it's more of a technique type of thing. Like the more you work on your technique, the better it's going to be. But even when you're in the ocean, you're not going to be full on doing normal rowing technique. No. So it's just building base strength up. And I have a theory about the hand gripping thing. So you've heard about like the claw issue?
Yeah.
I have a whole theory on like how to prevent it, and
interesting.
It's gonna work.
Yeah.
I believe it.
Well, I used to be a big wall climber, and like by the end of like a week on the wall, you get wall hands, so you have ibuprofen for breakfast because you can't bend your hands from just punching granite all day. So I know it.
It's that concept.
Yeah, I can see me definitely being, and I like that's just traditional mindset is ibuprofen for breakfast and get on with it. So it's just lazy, but
got it. So on your boat, you're gonna have 3 bottles of ibuprofen?
Yeah, and the rest I should think. Start buying it now, a packet a day. Yeah, no, you gotta be careful with it with ibuprofen and endurance, but it does work for that sort of impact damage mitigation. So yeah, I know that you shouldn't use it for endurance, so I will stave off it because people have got really hurt ultra running and stuff with ibuprofen, so it can be a nasty thing. No, it's
running you're pushing through it, whereas like the rowing, it's going to be more like, okay, so my hand isn't focusing on these blister type of things, like so it's a little bit different. You're not pushing yourself to that max like you are in an elite sport.
Yeah, see, that's true. I've not really thought. Yeah, that sort of impact damage should be mitigated just by the fact you're under output, basically. Yeah, it's all theory. This is what gets me about this whole thing. Like there are very few repeat rowers, so a lot of people are doing it on theory and just a thick head, which are 2 attributes that I've definitely demonstrated in the past. So we'll see if we can demonstrate them again.
So you've done rock climbing Yosemite, is that right?
Yeah, I climbed. Okay. That was. So I stopped climbing pretty much cold turkey nearly 8 years ago, 7.5 years ago. Like I climbed straight out of uni and didn't stop for 8 years, something like that. And then just sort of lost the joy of it. Mm-hmm. Like I can remember the move I was doing and I was like, I'm done. Like just not getting the same thing out of it. So stopped dead basically. And then, I've been like that. And then when I got back from that trip, we had children. Which a lot of people were like, I stopped having kids and stopped climbing and have kids, but it wasn't. It was separate decisions. Mm-hmm. And then like that was Heidi was born, so that was our first, and then 6 years of like trying to find a replacement for climbing. So like because I used to think about it every minute of every day, and I'll all be doing it, and then so I'm just that sort of mindset. So we did all sorts of daft stuff. Tried to skateboard 1,000 miles. But
how'd that go?
I tore a hamstring at 350.
So we did
just over 300 miles in 6 days. Self-supported, so no truck or anything, just us with sleeping bags. So that was pretty cool. Did some ultra marathons, a famous fell run here in the Lake District, which is 24 hours. And then got back on the bikes for a bit and did a bit of long distance mountain biking and stuff. Just sort of finding stuff to fit in. But then, this one's nice to have a bit of a longer term goal because most of those tend to be seasonal. Sort of start training in the winter and get it done in the spring, and then it's and then obviously we've been having children in between all that, so we're up to 4 now. So it's definitely been busy, but it's nice to have a longer term sort of all consuming project back on.
So how much do your kids help with your boat?
To a degree, like fiberglass isn't most conducive to toddlers. Like
true. How old's your oldest?
She's nearly 7. She'll be 7 in July, and then the next is just 5, and then just 3, and cedar's 14 months.
Okay.
So 2 years between them.
Yeah.
So they have helped a little with the fiberglass. They help more with the woodwork, like the original mold construction and stuff, because that was easier going. They've chipped in. They'll do more, but they're just out and about. Like, I've consciously not tried to work on it that much, however frustrating it is through the weekend or whatever, to be near it but not doing it. I've tried to be present and then just working in the evenings. So we've had some long evenings, and they've chipped in when we've been out there just dabbling with it. But yeah, they're more excited to play on it than they are to build it. They've got their own stuff going on, haven't they?
That makes sense. So you're building this in your garage, right?
Yeah, in my 6-meter square garage, which
That's
is
impressive.
for a 6.5-meter boat, means it's on the diagonal, surrounded by pink plastic cars and 12 bikes and sundry family lifestyle accessories. So it works though. I spent a lot of time faffing at the start, considering like building a bigger shed or a lean-to or something to do it in, and round and about the houses on it. But then thankfully a friend down the road had built a Canadian canoe, and he had a strong back where he built the mold. So he bought that down from up the road just to see it. And when you laid that out in the garage, it actually fit. And so, and the door just opened, so you can walk in. Okay. And it's been, I don't know how it's worked, but like laying up a 6.5-meter panel on the floor worked to within 4 inches. Like, and then doing 6 of those at a time, like just the amount of lifting and shifting we've had to do but then, I wouldn't be this far on if we hadn't done all that faffing. Like, if we'd have spent the time building a shed, I probably wouldn't be where I am. And the fact that it's right here and it's ready, and so just getting on with it.
Yeah.
And the thing I must do a post about it, but basically to build to where I've got to and to finish it, you need like a jigsaw, a Stanley knife, and a drill. Like, you don't need any tools.
Yeah.
Like, so I've got Dad's old drill, Dad's old jigsaw, Kate's grandfather's old Stanley knife.
Nice.
Basically, that's it. Like, you can build the whole thing with that. So there's no real, like, as long as you get a hold of a jigsaw pretty well to carve the panels in. But it's fairly forgiving material as well, so yeah, you just get on with it. I've seen your garage in your posts. You've got plenty of space.
So we're debating building a second garage. My husband does woodworking.
Cool.
So my garage is gym, and he wants a building like woodwork garage. So if we do that, then his will become the boat spot, I guess.
That's generous of him, because he'll have to control his dust when you're doing the fiberglass. That's my great crux. Like, ours used to be probably, well, not woodwork because I'm not that good, but timber mutilation. So, and bikes. So the three don't go together. So the bikes don't like the wood dust, and the fiberglass is supposed to be a clean job. So I've endeavored, but it's not as clean as it could be.
Yeah, that's why we don't want it like where I work out. It's like, nope, we'll put it in a separate spot.
Yeah, I've not made too much mess, to be fair.
Nice.
I would say, like, of the two, if he's happy to give up his wood shop to a boat, then that's very kind of him. Like, that's ideal. But there's not much mess on the floor. You can sheet down. There's only glassing the underside, like where you're doing the big layup and it drips off a bit. But you can easily mitigate that. Yeah, it's not a particularly messy task. Like, I was nervous of fiberglass because my only memory is of teenage years making a mess on school projects.
Okay.
But
so fiberglass is basically sheets, right?
Yeah,
it's just like sheets that are in different directions.
Yeah, so that's the matting, and then you get the resin, which sets it into a hard material. So you lay the sheet, and then you pour the resin on.
Oh, resin is the thing that you're like pulling across in the picture?
Oh, which picture? Resin's
I know, there's so many.
Yes, I know. So the resin's like a liquid that you mix up with a hardener, and that's what gives GRP its plastic material. So the glass fibers in the fiberglass are the strength, and then the resin bonds it into a plastic, basically.
Got it. And then, stupid question.
No such thing.
Thanks. So the base that you started with, is that wood?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So I made a frame. So Phil sent the picture of the bulkheads as dressed as a boat, and I drew back from that and drew a jig that would support the 7 bulkheads in the right angle and spacing.
Okay.
So, and then upside down, obviously, as well, because you're laying the bottom skin of the boat first.
Yep.
And then made a frame that would hold, because all the bulkheads are different shapes and different heights from some datum at the bottom. So you pulled the angle. So a lot of them are square, and then the fronts and backs lay in towards their respective ends. So made the frame such that it would support them all at the right angle.
Okay.
Then built up the 7 bulkheads, double-sided sticky tape them to the frame, so they were all held because the clamps would get in the way a bit. And then sort of triple check that with string lines and stuff, and then build the 6 sheets that form the bottom of the hull, and they're glassed on one side, and you glue them on to these bulkheads, and then lay large sheets of fiberglass over the whole of the bottom side to form that into a single piece. And that's once that's done, that's when you saw it turn around, is after that point. So there's 2 layers of fiberglass and sort of coats of resin in between each of those on the base. So the base is still to finish. There's a fairing coat to go on and some sealant, some sort of thin layers of resin to seal it up, and then the paint on the top. But we'll get to that once I've finished making this.
So you flipped your boat over now, right?
Yeah, so we're working on the internal fittings, like so the floor is cut. I've got the cabin roofs to do next, but they're also interrelated that you basically need to know all the answers before you can get to cutting any of it. So it's very sort of, very interrelated at the moment, but that's fine. Like, so yeah, you have to put the gunnel on before you can fit the bulkhead, before you can fit the roof, and to fit the bulkhead you have to put the floor in, and to put the floor in you have to make sure you know where the electrics panel's going, because you don't want to shaft that. So it's just getting all those answers lined up, but they're coming together now. So it feels like once you get going, it'll all just slot in because you'll have done all the answers. You know, there won't be any questions left. It'll just be a process of sticking everything together.
So Phil gave you the drawings, and then from the drawings, you basically had to figure out how to make it.
Yeah, he gave us a hint, like a couple of pages of, like a brain dump of how he saw it going, which was vital. But then, you know, I definitely contend that you can learn pretty much anything on the internet. Like, I learned to big wall climb on the internet. I learned to run. Like, I learned endurance training. I learned to build stuff. I learned how to build the camper van. Like, you name it. If you're good at Google, you can do whatever you want. So there's been a lot of that. But then, I guess, I didn't find what I wanted, which is what I've tried to become as best I can, which is a reference of someone else doing it. Like, I'd love to have hundreds of hours to make YouTube videos about the process and all that, but that's not real. I don't know how these people earn their money.
That's pretty much all they do, is my understanding.
Right. Well, that must be fantastic. So I figured like a photo a day is as committed as I can be to not wasting the build time, but still like provide a reference. And a few, like you and a couple of other guys have been in touch to say, like, how are you doing it? Who did you start with? So I guess I have to apologize to Phil if he gets loads of emails off the back. It won't be loads, well, it'll be 2 or 3. But
you know, if he can get it to the point where he's just like selling the CAD file and then just having people who have done it, like, I would love to reach out to you when I'm actually doing it and be like, I'm stuck.
Yeah. No, I think I'd like to be that. So obviously we have to check it first. So don't trust my build too much until it floats.
I'm going to wait until you come back in about June or July of next year.
Yeah. Proof of concept.
Because then also you'll know like the small nitpicky little things. Like you'll be like, oh, I wish this like electronic thing was slightly different. Like whatever it is, like you'll know that difference. Whereas we'll have no idea. Yeah,
definitely. It's the same with anything. Like if I was building it again, it'd be so much better because you know all the nuances first time around. But it's good enough. Perfection's the arch enemy of good enough. That's
what matters.
Should be written on the wall of my garage, that phrase.
Yeah, my our motto is imperfect action.
There you go. Yeah,
Just get going.
Get on with it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, I'm really enjoying your Instagram. So for people that don't know, that's how I found Pete. And it's got amazing pictures on there. I'm having trouble following it, but my husband follows it. I've been following for like months, and he looks up and he's like, I was like, just look at what I'm following. He's like, oh yeah, no, I can follow. Oh, okay, yeah, yeah. I'm like, that makes sense to you? Because to me, it just looks like a boat in the making.
Well, that's positive. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of pictures
totally
of green
gets it.
fiberglass.
Yeah.
But it'll turn white one day, and then it'll look like a real boat. So that's positive.
I've learned some of the parts about like taking care of it once it's actually built.
Mm-hmm.
No idea how to build one yet, but I'm learning that. So I've met with there's a guy who lives next to us who is part of Fight or Die.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Right. So he put a thing up on Instagram, and I was like, hey, can I like just come help you? Like whatever you have to do with your boat, like can I help? And he was like, yeah, come on by. So that was pretty cool. I got to see my first boat in person, which was nice.
There can't be many ocean rowboats in Colorado.
Nope. Oh, but serendipitously, so I'm part of the rowing club here, and I went out yesterday, and I was talking with somebody, and we went out for coffee afterwards, and there were 3 of us, and one of the people's like, hey, so what brought you into rowing? And she answered, so I watched this movie on Netflix, and you're going to think I'm crazy, but ocean rowing, and I was like...
Yeah.
I was like, we're going to coffee.
Nice. That's amazing.
But
yeah, that Netflix has a lot to offer for.
Yeah, us landlocked people apparently want to go in the ocean.
That's cool. Yeah.
So, do you plan on hopefully getting your boat out before? If your boat is not ready by May, are you just going to push it back? Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to slip. Yeah, there's got to be a cutoff for. I've got to be happy that the testing I've done is sufficient to prove its capacity. So I really want to get like a 48-hour outing sort of up in the North Sea, probably as a pair because it'll be coastal the whole time. So it's not really practical to go as a solo coastal in sort of anything but a sort of 6-hour window. Yeah. So I've got my best man is of similar size and shape to me, so I figure I'm going to have a fixed footboard because I can't be faffed with figuring out how to mount an adjustable footboard, so I'll just make the boat for me and find another 6'3" rower, so that'll simplify the construction of it.
So you're going out with 2 people?
Yeah, for the test runs I want to go as a pair, 1 so that I can get to know the systems, and 2 because it will need someone on the oars the whole time because it'll be close to the coast basically. There's a lot of tidal racing around us. The tides up north run quite quick, so it's not practical to go out on your own. But I'll do some 12-hour solos on. There's a big Loch Ness up near Inverness. It's sort of a 30-mile lake, so that's plenty to get some chop on, but still be safe on your own. So I'll get some 12-hour runs done on there. But yeah, if I can get a 48-hour or so shakedown at some point this winter, then that I'll be happy with. But yeah, if we don't get it built by that point, sort of everyone that's involved in it knows that it's got to be right to launch, so we'll just slip it.
When's the latest? Have you figured out like when the latest is that you can launch? I
figure I want to be in Canada the last week in May, ready for the weather window, basically. So ready for an easterly breeze on a running tide, and then as long as you've got like a forecast sort of in the 3-day range for a following wind, you can get pretty safely offshore over that period. So looking for a window like that any time from the last week in May, basically.
Okay. Awesome. You'll get there.
Yeah. So Christmas is sort of the cutoff for construction. So I can get some shakedowns and restocking, give or take. 6
months, I think you can do it. 7 months?
Thank you. Yeah, 7.5. Let's be generous.
I'll stop giving you math. You can.
Well, I just try not to do it, and then so that would put me a third of the way through the build, which doesn't seem unreasonable. Yeah,
you'll get there.
It's all theory, but we'll find out.
What was my question? I don't remember.
We spoke a bit about why I'm not doing the Talisker, I suppose, and why I've
Oh.
chosen to go independent.
That was good. One of my questions was going to be related to that, so thank you. Do you want to answer that?
I guess a whole slew of reasons. Again, one is I couldn't face spending that amount of money on an entry fee.
Yep.
And I know they provide sort of services, but from what I can see, most of those are available commercially. Also, I've come from a solo background. Like I was a solo climber for some points in my career, and if I go out running or riding, it's always on my own. And the Talisker, to me, the support yachts take away from that aspect of it. So when someone says to you, "Are you solo?" You're like, "Yeah, but there's a support yacht," and it's only me, and that's just my ethic that I don't like that nuance. So I want to say yeah. And because it's sort of, that's the first question I've had from a lot of people is like, oh, like who's next to you, or what, like who else are you going with, or what's with you? But I just want to be able to answer that in a binary way. I just want to say nope. And it's just me. So those are and then from a practical side of it, I just figured I want to row home, because then it's one round of shipping, like it's one flight. It's half the logistics, which reduces the cost, which is back to the money going to charity. Yep. So I'm only shipping to Canada, I'm only flying to Canada, and then when we pull into Scotland, in theory, touch wood, then I'll just drive home, and it's 3 hours and I'll be in my bed. So that logistics struck me. So that was quite early on, I made that plan. Mm-hmm. And then I guess again, on my, like, I probably sound a bit preachy, like, my ethic, the Talisker is so successful now. You see very few failures in it. Like they've got it down pat. They've got the whole precursor down. And if you look at the stats over the last 10 years, like most people finish, which is cool. Like, but there's not really an unknown. So if you enter the Talisker, you're 95% certain to finish or more. And you get the experience, and it's hard, but it's almost a guarantee. Whereas the crossing from Canada to the European mainland has, if you look at the solo stats, 10 guys have done it and 5 guys have failed. Yep. And that's more like my odds. Like that's hard, and there's unknowns, and it's not a guarantee. And I want to be part of that, because I think coming from climbing, I'm used to things failing. I'm used to making big decisions and not getting to the top. Yep. So I'm not fussed. I just want to get out there and make those choices. And I want the opportunity to make those myself, which is why that northern route is a bit more suitable for my requirements, I suppose.
Yep. I think that's awesome. I feel like everyone has that piece that matters to them for why they're doing it, and you know what you want. That's awesome.
Yeah, you got to have ethics. These are daft sports. They're of no benefit, no sort of real benefit. Yep. But you got to play by some rules. You just make them up yourself. So as long as you stick to them and you're honest about them, doesn't matter what you're up to.
Yeah. So have you done water sports before?
Not much. We went sea kayaking for our honeymoon. So we had sort of 15 days on between the Scottish Isles. Other than that, a few days here and there in sailing boats, just messing about, but nothing particular. So I'm coming at it from the other side. I'm coming at it from the solo side, and then from the like multi-month expedition climbs. So I'm used to like hard and grim and dangerous for periods. Yep. And just not used to the sea. So that's the new variable for me, whereas I think a lot of people come to it maybe more sea capable, but less used to that level of risk for that period of time. Yep. And less exposed to that sort of mindset and that sort of management.
I've got neither.
Yeah, that's a justifiable use in my mind of the Talisker race. Like they will ensure that you can risk assess before you go. Yeah. And they'll ensure that you're your risk-based choices are correct during your time out there.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like that's how my brain operates. Like I know how to get into that headspace and make rational, difficult decisions. So I want to get out there and retest it basically. And this is just a different arena to test it in.
Yeah. So since you don't have the sea-ish background for like navigation and stuff, where are you going to get that?
Navigation, as far as I can understand, well, the one joy of this route, the ideal line is the run bearing from St. John's back to Oban. So basically, you're following whatever it is, about 270, give or take, the whole way. So there's a lot of systems in for the navigation. I've got a lot of land-based navigation experience.
Okay.
So I'm not too concerned about adapting it. It seems very simplistic for the most part, in that apart from like you can't make that much concession to weather. You can move 30 miles one way or the other maybe in a 24-hour period, not with any guarantee. And so your nav will basically come from adjusting your true heading each 6-hour period, and it's only going to be percentages of degrees for the first 2/3 of it until you're coming in tighter to a landing cone effectively. And yeah, it is a pastime that appears to be at the vagaries of the weather. So you're just going to go out there and take it, and then accept that you're going to change your bearing over the period. Yeah, I've got enough.
Are you going to have an auto helm?
Yeah, I've been chatting to a guy who makes so not the Raymarine or Garmin, basically, which seem to burn out like there's no tomorrow from everyone's reports that you read. Chap in the States that makes wind vanes, autopilots and wind vane auto helms, called Pelagic, and he's been really helpful. So we're
How do you spell that?
Pelagic. So we're going to put one of his systems in, which is independent of the plotter. Okay. So it's sort of, and so you just put you put a true bearing into that, and it will take you on that true course. So rather than try and run it off the plotter and let it adapt constantly, it's maybe mildly less efficient, but you're only going at 3 knots, so you're talking micrometers here and there. Yeah. But what it does is it allows it to operate on an independent electrical circuit, so it's one less connection to go wrong. Whereas if your auto helm's wired to your plotter and one or other snuffs it, then you're down 2 systems.
So I talked to people who said the auto helm didn't go well, burned out in like 4 hours.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
Whereas this chap is very confident that his kit is capable of single-handed Atlantic crossing, and he's proved it. So I see no reason not to trust him. His kit looks really good and redundant, and we're going to put it internally as well, so it'll be a lot drier. His systems are designed for on-deck use, so we're going to keep it in the back cabin. So fingers crossed. But then, and again, all theory, but this is the way my mind goes. Like, you could basically trim your rudder every 4 hours and not lose masses of output. Because if you're running off the compass, you're going to be, like, the auto helm at 3 knots is not going to be efficient because there's not enough momentum there to keep you true anyway. Yeah. So
it just keeps you pointing in the right direction, right?
Approximately. But there's not really the physical speed to allow it to turn you with any venom. Yeah. Whereas if you're clipping on at 10 knots and you've got a sail full of wind, there's actually some resistance you can use to steer it. Yeah. Whereas splashing along at 2.5 knots, physics doesn't allow that size of rudder to turn you very quickly, basically. So you are going to be somewhere between helmed and sort of using your eye. So, it's redundant. And that there was a chap 15 years ago did the whole thing without a rudder. So he just set off and got it done. So
I'm sure it's been done. Someone just crossed in like a barrel.
Well, quite. So.
No, so like really.
Yeah, I know. So we're just in glorified barrels that you appear to be putting some physical effort into.
That's crazy. He just like basically took the winds across.
Yeah, he's a pretty tough dude though. Like, he took a beating.
Yeah.
So Yeah, it's a funny old game, isn't it? But it's interesting enough to keep us engaged, and that's all that matters. Yeah,
Well,
so there's
I'm
lots
excited to
think
follow
about.
you.
I'm glad, thank you. Yeah, it feels like nice to know that the social media I'm managing is acceptable, because it's certainly not my original skill set.
I found you, and I think it's great. I think the post you're making about you along the process is really helpful, and clearly people are reaching out to you for that, and that's resonating with people. So you got it. You'll get there. It'll keep growing.
Yeah, that's it. Just enough of that to keep it ticking over, and that doesn't detract too much.
Anything else that you want to share that I haven't asked?
No, I don't think so. No, I'd love it if more people were excited to see it chip away. So yeah, follow along and ask me any questions, because it is nice to have the sounding board. Like, it's nice to at least put your own thoughts down and just like check them yourself, if nothing else. So yeah, any questions are really useful, like hows and whys and have you remembered to's, because awesome. The more questions people ask, the more I have to check that I've thought about that specific bit. So that's really good.
All right. Anybody listening who can understand what's happening in the pictures and has good questions, put them out there.
No, there's no daft questions. Just fire them in.
I feel like I don't even know what's going on yet. I think when you start putting more electronics and things in, I'll have more questions on it. But right now, I'm just like, oh, it's a boat. Cool.
Yeah. It looks like it should be easy to do, because it's just stick and glue. So no reason why it shouldn't be cracking on. But I think
excited to see it.
Thank you. Stuff should start going in the next few weeks, give or take.
Ooh, that's some progress.
I've got like 7 more panels to do. So once the front cabin roof is on, then all the fittings can start going in.
Nice. Almost there. A few weeks.
Yes. Yeah. We'll see.
Well, thanks for joining for the podcast.
No, thank you.
It's been an honor having you. I'm excited so we're going to have Pete on again, hopefully before he crosses and then after he crosses. So we'll kind of see how it goes. And I'm excited because I want to build his boat. So hopefully this boat works.
Yeah. If it doesn't, it'll be a reflection on me and not the boat.
No, it'll be all together. So thank you so much for jumping on. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Cool.
Thanks for listening to episode 7 of the Ocean Rowing Podcast. So glad you're here. If you liked it, please hit that subscribe button or leave a comment or review on iTunes. I'd greatly appreciate it. And stay tuned for the next episode coming later this month.